everybody, to another episode of iFU.podcast. I'm your host, Austin, with my fellow co-hosts,
Sarah
and Trent.
And this week, we are going to be talking about courage. But a quick recap. Last week, we had talked about fears and why we have them, along with
facing your fears and confronting your fears, about the same thing, but
and not letting your fear stop you from doing what you need to do or to meet your goals or to talk to somebody.
That's right. So this week we're going to talk about facing them, and that, of course, means to have courage. So the definition of courage, not that you don't have fear, but while having fear, you face what you're fearful of.
Right. Courage is not being fearless. That's how a lot of people look at it. It's like, wow, he's fearless. He's got all the courage. No. Courage is having fear, but facing it anyway. So there are many aspects in our life where having courage is important. One of those would be for building your relationships.
And how can we show courage in our relationships?
Well, if you're afraid of having a conversation with someone, you're afraid of the outcome of that, you might need to work up courage to have that difficult conversation.
So having courage in our relationships can mean to admitting to something we've been hiding or holding back, right? And telling the other person, whether it's our partner or spouse, whatever, and still being okay with the consequence of what it might be.
Yes, that might be you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, or maybe you're afraid of how they might hurt your feelings, afraid of having to take responsibility for something, or dealing with your own problems in that way.
And I think having courage in your relationships also show that oftentimes you have to show you're vulnerable, which kind of displays like humility in yourself. And when we do that, our partner realizes, okay, so there's more here to this person than obviously what I've been seeing. And hopefully they receive it well and don't get on the offense of anything, whether it has to do with them or not, but is able to help walk you through whatever it is you need to get through or what you could have feared before.
It's definitely something that I've struggled with, I think, all my life, is especially just the way I was raised was if you say the wrong thing or you criticize or anything, though, I was just used to getting very negative reactions in people. Talking about my feelings or talking to someone else about serious issues has always been a struggle for me because I know subconsciously I have a fear that it's going to have a very negative impact.
And to push even harder into that, I think a lot of people have a large fear in relationships with being vulnerable and being open and communicating everything to their person, because they fear, not only do they fear losing that person, but they fear that person may have now a negative opinion of them. They fear that that person may not communicate back with them.
I think the biggest thing is, though, when we are faced with having to have courage, the fear is that it brings up a lot of memories of our past. Because no matter where you come from, I heard this the other day at church, and it could be just like, let's say your friend or your partner, whatever, they throw a towel down on the ground. Well, maybe instance of throwing the towel down on the ground wasn't necessarily, the reason why you have to deal with something, but it's because way back when your dad or your mom did something with the laundry and the other parent did not approve, or for some reason, it could be abusive or whatever, and because they weren't doing something right, for that moment, you remember that. And so then you have to have courage not only to deal with that memory, but also to be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm dealing with to your partner or your spouse. This is, like I said, being vulnerable. And in that you grow as a person, and not only that, but you strengthen your relationship.
I believe the strongest relationships go through the hardest times. And a lot of that trust is built in knowing that even if that person, you are that person's least favorite person today. And then you come out of it, you guys have solved all your problems together. Both of you stayed loyal. Both of you never gave up on each other. Even if you weren't talking, even if someone was mad and they walked out, staying through the hard times is where I think a lot of long-term couples not only gain trust, but gain the reward in the relationship, gain, okay, I know this person isn't going anywhere. They gain a outlook of it's not me versus you. It isn't, I'm mad at you because you left this towel on the ground and you're just being lazy and you're just this. It's learning to compromise out of respect for your partner. I think people gain a lot of respect through being with their partner and going through the hard times. And that makes the long years, all the little teeny tiny problems that come up, nothing when you've gone through the hard times.
Yeah, I think the big thing is whether it's your friends, your coworkers, whoever you're around with that you consider to have value in your relationship, you're not aiming to make each other the enemy. You guys are not enemies. You're a team. And you're continuing to grow, hopefully in your friendship or your relationship, whatever it might be. So just because there's an instance like throwing the towel down on the ground, you need to realize that it's not their fault that I feel this way, because there's obviously something more behind it. When you have the courage to realize that, because sometimes courage isn't just outwardly showing, it's internally. You have to be brave enough to face yourself.
I think a lot of fear, especially, let's talk about romantic relationships. A lot of people's fears when it comes to vulnerability and communication and everything like that is the fear that they will have to hold themselves accountable. Okay, well, if I've communicated this and this and this and this is their answer, and I know that is not going to work for me long term, am I ready to take the steps I need to keep myself safe, to continue to trust myself, to continue to trust my boundaries, to continue to hold what I hold valuable over just the loss of a relationship? Because I think that's where a lot of us have a lot of fear is, but if I do this, I'm going to lose this person. But if I do this, then it'll go this way and I don't want it to. Doing through all of these things is going to gain trust within yourself to know that you, given the information, will make the right decision for yourself to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself happy. And it all comes down into just these simple things that we've talked about, actually.
And the sooner you face those particular fears, the better it's going to be. If you let things just fester and tear you up, it's just worse long term for everybody.
It can actually affect your physical health too if it's a big enough fear and it weighs on you.
Yeah, if it's causing nervousness, if it's causing anxiety, if it's causing constant anger, if it's causing constant sadness, all those negative emotions. Actually, let me wean anger out of there, because let's be honest, anger is just a symptom of much deeper emotion. So let's take anger out. But when you're feeling those negative emotions all the time, it weighs on your body, just like if you were to go to the gym and over-push yourself every day.
So we talked about having courage in our relationships, and we realized that if we don't have the courage to face whatever it is we need to face to help grow those relationships. Now, but when it comes to our goals, the big thing in having courage, and we kind of talked this before in episode 2, about setting a structure for yourself. So how can we display courage in setting a structure for our goals?
A big part of that is that's going to be a massive change in your life sometimes. It's just set a goal or a structure, and it's going to require a lot of courage sometimes. Step out of your box and start doing something new and doing it regularly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's major problems are very surface, like social anxiety. They get nervous because they go to start something new, like the gym or boxing or dancing, podcast, which is not for us, but I'm sure there's people who have created a podcast with people that they just have similar, they don't know each other as well as we do. It starts with such little things like that, like I said, social anxiety, and you've got to use your courage to get over that hump, to get yourself in there and start. Because if you never start, then you're never going to work on your goals.
Sometimes setting up that structure is going to require you to step on someone else's toes.
Yeah.
And that might require a lot of courage. Like, say, I'm going to be here at a certain time every day of the week or a certain day of the week. Other people may have problems with you having a new schedule or something like that.
And I think if you go more personal with it, let's say the structure you're setting for yourself is more a spiritual aspect in growth, or you just want to become a better person in general, well, you're going to set the boundaries of that structure. And that might even include excluding individuals in your life who are taking you, and they might not mean to, but are taking you to a place where you don't want to be, mentally or emotionally.
That could be saying, look, I'm staying away from the bars. Maybe you have a bad drinking habit. So that's going to offend probably some of your friends that you're used to doing that kind of thing with. Or maybe if it's something more simple like I deal with is, look, I got to go to bed earlier on Saturday because I got to get up for Sunday. And a lot of people don't like that either. Play this game with me. You can go to church anytime. No, sorry, I'll play with you so long, but I'm going to bed because I'm getting up and go to church in the morning.
Going to church or whatever you do on Sunday, or like you guys talk about going to the gym, that's a goal, that's a structure, and so you have to guard it. You have to guard your time, and it's so difficult in such a busy world we live in, and so you have to have that courage to just say, I am doing this. I'm doing it now. I'm doing it today. Or the way I'm treating people, or the way I'm going to act, this is how I'm going to act. And just having the courage to push through whatever it might be is the primary goal for that. As we're kind of going through relationships and set structure, and we're pulling from our previous episodes, our next topic would be distractions. And like I said before, the world is just always pulling us for distractions. So when we have courage to talk about our distractions, as we mentioned before, there are good distractions and bad distractions. But how can you display courage when you know you need a good distraction?
So that might be, say you're driven to do something, something's going to be very hard. You might realize, look, I'm not ready to do this, and I might just need to distract myself for a little while before doing that. And that might take you some courage to look in yourself and say, I'm not ready to do this yet. I got to do something else.
Just comes into a self-accountability as, am I ready to do this? Because if it's having a serious conversation with somebody and you're already emotional, I don't think you should sit there and walk into the serious conversation already being emotional. Or if it's just going to the gym and you recognize you go to the gym way too much, are you ready to hold yourself accountable and be like, okay, at this point, I'm using it as an avoidance, not as something to benefit my life, not something to help me chill out, not something to help me feel a sense of accomplishment. I'm actually using it just to completely avoid emotionally what's going on inside. You've got to hold yourself accountable for creating habits and using them as distractions in a negative way.
And distractions are often what lead us to fear. And that's the whole reason why we were bringing up courage. Because when we use distractions, like if we decide to be on our phone instead of improving this situation, like I could improve my relationship, or I could improve, my quality time with my kids. I could improve learning something new and increasing my knowledge in, or taking my time and putting my effort into something that I really should be striving for. It takes courage to get through those distractions, as it takes courage to get through those distractions, we need to see and recognize where we need to put our boundaries. Because when the world pulls at us with simple things as being on our phone, maybe we should set a boundary or locking method on your phone to be like, you can't access your apps during this time because you know you need to work on this. Or if you notice that, well, I'm just, playing video games just so I can avoid a heavy conversation with my spouse, maybe you should have the courage to just put down the video game and say, okay, I need to approach this with my emotional level, not being at 100, but probably at about 50, and have that conversation with that person.
Yeah, so anytime you have to break that cycle that you set up for yourself, it's going to require some courage. It's like, I'd rather sit at home and play video games than, do what I know I need to be doing. A lot of times you just have to face yourself and then face that fear and just step out and say, I gotta do this and do it.
And oftentimes when we do face our fear, even if the result is kind of negative, you personally probably feel a little lighter.
Yeah, you feel like you're unloading, like you took your backpack off. I can agree with that. Anytime I have a serious conversation and I finally get to a point where it's like, okay, I need you to sit here and I need you to listen to me because I've got all this going on. Number one, I failed myself because I should have brought this stuff up a long time ago. I shouldn't have let it get here. But I know at some point I had to do this. So I'm asking you now to do this with me. Regardless of your reaction to it, I need you to sit here and I need you to listen to me. Because it's all coming, whether we want to admit it or not. Even some of the worst conversations come from caring about that person or loving that person and just wanting to be on the same page with that person. If someone's not fighting you, they don't care enough to even make it a deal in the first place.
Right. If they just be like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
if you're in a relationship with someone who never cares at all, ever, what you're doing or how you feel, if that person isn't your person.
No.
That person should have a level of care about something and anything, especially if it's negatively affecting you. They should want to know that.
Those kind of people, they're more about themselves.
Yeah.
They'll be like, well, that's kind of your issue, and it doesn't really affect me or whatever I'm wanting to do. So, okay, yeah, I hear you. Mm-hmm. And then they just go on and on. Even if it's something they are doing, they're not going to stop for you because they're like, well, you had the issue, not me. But on a positive note, when we have courage, like I said, we kind of feel lighter, but there are other results that we can have from having courage as well.
Such as building trust with yourself, because you went out there and you did that. You met that fear, you did that, regardless of whatever happened, even if it was a horrible reaction or a horrible result of whatever you faced. You build trust within yourself to be like, okay, the storm's over. It's done. I did it. But I did it. And I can make it through the next thing too. And that builds trust and strength within yourself. You slowly build up strength when you're someone, like I started years ago as a people pleaser. So building strength and wanting to voice myself was my number one battle. And it's still a battle that I battle today. But I definitely stand up for myself way more than I did years ago. But it's still something I'm going to have to continue to work on.
Yeah, like I had said earlier in the previous episode, fear is a driving force, and often it's negative. But when you actually have some courage and work on that, you can push that to something more positive. I think we could also talk about different ways of having courage or tools people could use to actually apply. Because we say courage, but we don't really haven't really given a good way of activating it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I was thinking, one would be your support groups. So, I would come to you guys with anything that I'm struggling with, and that would probably embolden me to go ahead and do whatever I'm afraid of doing. Just one example.
Or if it's even not relationships, but like setting up a structure for yourself, you have to dedicate the time to sit down and write out a plan. Be like, I'm doing this during this day and this time, and I will be here. And it might be with people, it might not be with people, but whatever it is. And when you have that wrote down, then all you have to do is take the step to do it. And it's that much easier.
I mean, a good example of that is me and Sarah going to the gym every day, even after Sarah broke her arm and wasn't able to come anymore. For me, it became much easier, even though I'm by myself, to go, because I've already acclimated myself to that environment. And so it's no longer stressful to be there, and I'm comfortable doing it.
Yeah, you're familiar with it. You know where everything is. So even when you hit the points when your anxiety is there and you're like, oh, I don't want to watch people to watch me do this, or oh, I don't want to go get this because I don't know where it's at. No, you know exactly where it's at. So you're like, even if I just walk fast and I just go get it, like, just knowing where you are, where everything's at, I feel like, in any sense, for someone that's got anxiety, is top tier support and confidence, because you don't, then you feel even more insecure and you're like, then I got to walk in front of people, but then I got to do my exercise in front of them. And
like, one of the first times I was there without you, I was like, Sarah, you need to get here because this guy talked to me.
Yeah. I wasn't there chatting your ear off, talking about literally anything and everything, because I just go like a book.
It's like, how dare this other person speak to me in public?
So the big thing is really creating a way for you to set yourself up so you're familiar with whatever you are going to get into. Build courage, and it'll be easier to take that step to do what you need to do. The big question is, kind of for us, but also for you, is where are you now in your life? And we've talked about people, we've talked about structure, we talked about distractions and fear and having courage. But the whole idea is to maintain positivity and creating a positive lifestyle for yourself in your spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, all around person. So where are you now? What do you still need to work on? Is it your relationships? Is it your structure? Do you realize you might have one too many distractions? And what is possibly holding you back that you need to face to step into being that more positive person that you need to be? As we've always talked about, what is your goal? You have to have a goal. If you don't have a goal for yourself, you're just kind of taking up space. You're just kind of wandering around here on this planet, being like, what's my purpose for my life? What am I doing? Is there a reason that I'm doing the things I'm doing? So where are you going? And then once you achieve those goals, you come up with so many different outcomes for you. For me personally, where I say I am now, I obviously always have to continue working on my relationship. I mean, if you're married or in any type of relationship, you should constantly be working on it. And right now it might be smooth, but we all have rough patches. And the big idea is to have courage like before and step into it. Like if you're feeling like you're being held back by something or a fear, or you're worried of what the person might say, have that open communication. Just because you're afraid of a result doesn't mean you're going to get that result. Not only that, but you'll feel better as a person when you do let that out. And for me, my wife and I, we are constantly working on that. The big thing that we have to work on, though, is our structure. I need to get better at planning and setting times for what I need to do. Now here lately, my kid's been sick, and that throws things to the side sometimes. But we have to step back into that structure, and that includes structuring our finances. We need to get better at budgeting. We need to get better at time of like when I'm doing this for work, for podcasts, for voiceover, family time, and time just for us two. And for me personally, biggest distraction is my phone. Easy to say. I need to get off the thing. In fact, this morning I deleted 2 apps And I realized that I don't need these because they're just, distracting me from what I really need to be working on. And for me, it was more of a spiritual aspect and kind of more in my devotional life.
For me and where I'm at now, I think I'm doing pretty good for myself. I'm making a bigger effort to be in church and work on my spiritual health. Doing more to keep myself in a positive headspace. And I'm seeing a lot of good results in the gym. Financially, like I've not really wasted a ton of money on things I don't really need. So I'm doing good there. I've got great friends. I've got a good job. Going to church, going to the gym. I think where I'm at right now in life is probably much better than I think it's ever really been, if I'm honest with myself. So I think I'm pretty happy. Aside from things in life that are just simply out of my control, I'm doing pretty good.
I was going to ask you a question, but then I lost it by the time you were done talking. That's why I was just looking at you like, oh my God, what was it? There was a question. When it comes to my goals, my physical training, unfortunately with me breaking my wrist, literally right before we started this podcast, my goal was for physical training. And while it has not gone the way I hoped it would, it is going. I do manage to get there to the gym now, with you or without you, 3 times a week. So unfortunately I can only do like abs or legs, but legs I struggled with for a long time. So it's good to get more leg time in right now. So while it is not where I wanted to be, expected to be, I'm still making progress. Whether it's slower than what I had expected, I'm still making progress. Let's see, another one of my goals was being a good mom. I think parenting is always slow progress. I think parenting, I was learning it before and I've learned it the entire time. It is a learning aspect in your life. It requires experience to do it and to know where you are. I do think I'm doing way better than where I started. I do know one of my failures is emotional patience. And I won't even say failures because I am much better than I actually expected, but not where I want to be. So, like I said, slower progress, but I'm getting there. I'm a very impatient person, so it's normal for me to be like, nope, this isn't where I wanted to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I tend to get impatient with myself, which is something I'm learning with myself, is to have patience with myself, have grace with myself, trust myself to know that I'm going in the right direction, regardless of how slow or how fast it is. And then my last one was my spiritual goal. I definitely feel like I am on a knowledge-based path right now when it comes to my spiritual goals. I think what episode was it we talked about like our goals and everything? What was that, episode 2? We talked about it. I said that I wanted to stick firm to things I believed in. And karma, I got that one down pat. You know what I mean? I'm doing pretty good. Sitting at home, I drive myself mentally insane sometimes, but it's okay. I've corrected myself. I noticed when I'm being a negative person and I correct myself. And then I think I briefly mentioned energy transfer, and I was actually not looking into it. I stumbled upon it today watching videos, and there was a gentleman talking about energy transfer and how all of our energy comes from Earth, where, you die, you go there, it goes back in, yada, yada, yada. But he teaches his kids not only to take care of the earth, but it's because you are nurturing the energy, if that makes any sense. He said the easiest way to explain it is to see the energy as like a god. Like if you don't give energy back to that, or you're not staying faithful to that or taking care of that, then how can you truly show yourself as a follower to that? You have to be able to maintain and nurture it. So he just talked about simply watering his plants. It was giving energy back to the earth. Even the kind of gross things, which is, the weight and everything like that going back to the earth, and then using that to be able to ground yourself, which I've always believed myself. If you're outside and you're barefoot, you're grounding yourself. You're bringing yourself way back to a neutral position. And he actually discussed grounding, you're not liking it, getting your hands in earth. So whether it be gardening, whether it be, God, there's so many things you can do outside, whether it be nurturing trees, going on a hike, getting your hands in it. is an even deeper level of it. And that's actually something I actually have a future goal of, is when I'm not feeling that way. And if going outside barefooted is not helping me, then I'm actually going to try that. I think it'd be a lot easier in the summer, but I still got some time, baby. I could still go out there. The ground isn't frozen out here yet, so that's my plan for that. But definitely my goals there now still are to learn. Like, I think I asked you guys a bunch of questions before this podcast even started about, Christianity and like certain things that were missing, and what your thought about it. And you guys gave me knowledge on that. That was purely knowledge. I'm like, hey, I saw this video on this. Like, I have no knowledge in it. What do you guys think? You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with what I believe in, but I thought, what a weird thing. You guys taught me about apps and all this different stuff. And it's like, what do you think about this? And I really like that path for myself.
And even like going on what you were saying earlier, like that's even grounded in Christianity as well. As Adam and Eve were put here to work the land. And so, and scientifically speaking, like there's a lot of, when you're looking at like the electromagnetic fields and stuff like that and how our bodies work, that's grounded in actual science. It may be pseudoscience, but it's still science, you know?
That's what I'm saying, is that to anyone who puts a great deal of knowledge into anything, you'll really realize how a lot of different things, even religions, are so closely tied in that if you pay attention, it's not all the same thing. It's not. But it's very easily linkable to something else.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the things that I've learned in Christianity is, in Christianity, you're taught that God created the world. Well, and then you also learn that He's created so many beautiful things. And so you learn to just appreciate the environment you're around and everything. And that goes back to, when you just sit there and you look at a sunrise. Like, what does that feeling bring to you? It's not obviously despair. Oh man, it's morning,
Yeah.
No, you're just like, man, that is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's the gratitude for life. I think learning gratitude is a constant learning habit to humans outside of just learning how to human. Because let's face it, our entire life is just learning how to be a human being. But definitely learning gratitude for the positive, the negative, the beauty, the nasty, all of that, the experience, gaining gratitude for your experience is hands down a good teacher.
When you set yourself up for these goals, you have a certain outcome you're trying to achieve. Like for me personally, one of my goals is voice acting. Well, I want to become a professional voice actor. But what does that look like? It looks like I'm doing voices for video games, commercials, and animations, things like that. When I'm setting a goal from me being a good parent, well, the outcome I hope one day is when my kids grow to be old, they can use my example that I was as a parent on their kids. And then they also realize just how much love Dad gave them. And so they can see that example to pour into their kids as well. That would be an amazing outcome, even if I'm long past. And just for me as a person spiritually, my ultimate goal as a Christian is to one day be in heaven when I pass away. But I also hope to, be a light and be positive, bring positivity to people in the world and those around me. Whether they believe what I believe or not, I want them to see that there isn't all bad in this world. There are still good people. And that's kind of what I'm aspiring to. My goal kind of with this podcast, let's be the light in the world and share it with people around us.
So as an overall aspect, how are you guys feeling about your goals? Do you feel like it's mostly positive? You think you're meeting it? You think you're struggling?
I think I'm meeting my goals pretty well. There's obviously always going to be more you can do, but I feel like I'm in a good place.
Yeah. Meeting your goal is not the end story. You meet one goal and you're at the bottom of the mountain for your next goal.
Yeah.
Right.
You meet that one, you're at the bottom of the mountain for your next one. It's continuing growth.
And like you said before, I'm doing good at where I'm at, but I'm not where I want to be.
Yep.
And that's the goal. You will never be where you want to be because you should always be pushing for the next step.
But enjoy where you are too.
But enjoy where you are, absolutely. So after we find our courage, with the people in our life and setting a structure, dealing with our distractions and facing our fear, hopefully you can see the results and the outcomes of where you're at, who you want to be, and what could potentially be the final goal for you. The next episode, we'll be talking about outcomes. But until next week, we want to thank you guys for coming. And once again, thank you for listening to iFU.podcast. And remember, you are loved.
Always be kind.
Keep trying.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye!